Okay, so let's get right into it. If you've spent any time at all in the world of web development, you've definitely heard the name React. But what is it, really? And how in the world did it get so big? We're going to break it all down and demystify one of the most important tools for building the web today.
So let me just start by asking you a question. When you think about building the part of a website you actually see and interact with, the buttons, the menus, the whole look and feel, what technology do you think is king of the hill right now? There are a few heavy hitters for sure, but one is in a league of its own.
And yeah, this chart pretty much says it all. If you look at the Google Trends data, React is just completely dominating the conversation. Now, don't get me wrong, other tools like Angular and Vue are fantastic, but there's no denying that React has captured a huge chunk of the developer world, and more importantly, the job market.
So that brings us to the big question. We know it's popular, but what actually is React? Let's define it.
At its heart, this is the simplest way to put it. It's a JavaScript library, and that word is important, we'll come back to it, that has one main job: helping developers build fast, interactive user interfaces. It's not trying to do everything. It's focused on that one piece of the puzzle you, the user, see and touch.
And this isn't some fly-by-night technology. React has been around for a while. It was actually born inside Facebook way back in 2011. They needed a better way to manage their own super complex interfaces, like, the news feed, and React was their solution. It was battle-tested in a huge way before it was ever released to the public.
And that popularity we saw in the chart, that's not just some abstract number. It has a huge real-world impact. What it means for anyone looking to be a front-end developer is that learning React opens up a ton of doors. It's pretty much become a must-have skill on a modern web developer's resume.
Okay, now, to really get React, you have to understand its core philosophy. This is the big idea that changes how you think about building a website. It's all about thinking in components.
So this is the central concept. Instead of looking at a web page as one giant, single file, React says, hey, let's break this down into small, reusable, self-contained pieces, and each one of those pieces is called a component. Think of them like Lego bricks for your user interface.
Let's make this real. Imagine a site like Twitter. A React developer wouldn't build the whole page at once. Nope. They'd build a navbar component for the top, a profile component for the side, a big feed component for the middle, and then you can go deeper. That feed component would be made up of a bunch of individual tweet components, and inside each of those, you might have an even smaller, reusable like component. See how it breaks down?
So you can picture any React app as a tree of these components. And here's the really cool part. Each one is independent and isolated. You can work on that like button all by itself, make sure it works perfectly, and then you can pop it into your app wherever you need it, and it won't break anything else. It's an incredibly powerful way to build things.
Okay, so components are the building blocks. But what makes React so fast? What's the secret sauce that makes it feel so snappy? Well, that brings us to something called the virtual DOM.
This quote really hits the nail on the head. You see, historically, updating what's on the screen, what developers call the DOM, was a slow and clunky process. React's big promise is this. You just worry about your data, or what we call state. You tell React, hey, the data just changed, and React handles the messy business of updating the screen automatically.
So how does it pull this off? It uses this genius idea called the virtual DOM. Think of it like a lightweight copy, a blueprint, of the real DOM that lives only in memory. And here's the key. Making changes to this in-memory blueprint is super fast. It's incredibly cheap and efficient compared to messing with the real screen. This means the app feels incredibly responsive to the user, and honestly, it makes life a whole lot easier for the developer too.
So here's how that process actually works step by step. Let's say you click that like button again. That changes the state of the component. Instantly, React creates a brand new virtual DOM in memory that reflects that change. Then, and this is the magic part, it runs a super fast comparison between the new blueprint and the old one. It finds the one tiny thing that's different, the like count, and then it reaches into the real DOM and updates only that one specific spot. It doesn't have to redraw the whole page, just that tiny piece. It's incredibly efficient.
And that's it. That's the big aha moment. This is exactly why it's called React, because your user interface is just sitting there, ready to automatically and efficiently react to any changes in your application's data. You don't have to tell it how to change, you just change the data and the UI reacts. Simple as that.
All right, there's one last crucial distinction we need to make. To really understand where React fits into the grand scheme of things, we have to talk about the difference between a library and a framework.
This is a super important comparison. On one side, you have React, which is a library. Its job is very focused. It only handles the view, the UI. For everything else, like how your app handles different pages or talks to a server, you get to pick and choose other tools to plug in. On the other side, you have something like Angular, which is a framework. Think of it as a complete all-in-one toolbox. It gives you everything you need right out of the box, but it's also more opinionated. It has its own specific way of doing things.
So, you might be wondering, what's the benefit of React's library approach? Well, for one, the core library itself is smaller, so it can be easier to get started. But the big win is flexibility. You have the freedom to choose the absolute best tool for every job, the best router, the best state manager, and assemble a toolkit that's perfectly suited for whatever you're building.
And that kind of leaves us with this final thought. React's whole philosophy boils down to a classic idea. Do one thing and do it really, really well. It bets on focused tools and developer freedom over a single all-encompassing solution. So the big question for us to think about is this model of focused flexibility the future of how we'll build the web?